The press room was already restless before he spoke. Journalists jostled for seats. Cameras blinked red from every corner, and the murmur of voices buzzed against the low ceiling like trapped bees. Bright white lights washed everything flat, exposing the sweat on foreheads and the twitch of nervous hands gripping microphones. A table ran across the stage, draped in black, lined with bottles of water no one touched. At the center sat Dana White, leaning back in his chair, shoulders squared, jaw set with the easy arrogance of a man who had never doubted the sound of his own voice. He leaned into the mic with no warning, cutting through the chatter like a blade. "Today," he said, words sharp and measured, "she loses that belt. I'll put my own money on it." The room erupted. Gasps, shouts, laughter, sharp and disbelieving. A forest of hands shot up, reporters half rising from their chairs, jostling to be seen. "Are you serious? Did you just say—" The questions overlapped, colliding into static. The cameras zoomed tight, lenses whining as they locked onto his face. Dana didn't blink. He smiled, wide and cruel, like he'd just dropped a card on the table no one else knew he was holding. "You heard me," he said, nodding. "The era's over. Write that down." Half the room laughed, some of it forced, some of it genuine. A cluster of younger reporters snickered openly, flipping through their notes as if already drafting the headline. Others looked stunned, their eyes darting to the woman seated 2 chairs away. Ronda Rousey sat stiff-backed, her black blazer cutting a straight line down to her folded hands. Her head was tilted down, gaze fixed somewhere on the table. From a distance, it looked like detachment, almost indifference. But up close, the cameras caught the subtle tension, the slight whitening of knuckles pressed against her own knees, the way her thumb traced the edge of her nail once, then stopped. She didn't react. Not yet. Dana leaned forward again, feeding on the chaos he had stirred. "You all know it. I know it. She used to be untouchable. But not anymore. Not tonight." He gestured broadly with his hand, sweeping toward the cluster of photographers who snapped furiously, bulbs strobing across the stage. "This is the fight that closes the book." The crowd of journalists roared with questions. Some shouted about betting lines, others about betrayal. One woman in the back screamed, "But you built her up! You called her the face of the sport!" The question cut through, louder than the rest. Dana's grin didn't falter. "That was then," he said. His tone dropped colder. "The sport doesn't wait for anyone. You can't live off old highlights forever." The words rippled outward, carried instantly beyond the walls. Screens lit up across the globe, live streams feeding Twitter, Reddit, YouTube. Notifications popped on phones in living rooms, bars, gyms. Some fans laughed, thrilled by the bluntness. Others spat curses at their screens, furious that the man who once crowned her queen now came to strip her throne with his mouth. Inside the room, the noise swelled. Reporters typed furiously, the clatter of keys a storm on plastic. Shouts overlapped until no one voice could be understood. Dana sat back and drank his water, smug, unhurried. He had lit the fire and now watched it spread. Ronda finally raised her head. The cameras swung instantly, the lenses hungry for her face. Her eyes were cold, steady, the kind of look that belonged less to a fighter than to someone staring through glass at a specimen. She didn't look at Dana. She didn't look at the crowd. She looked straight ahead, her lips pressed tight, her breathing invisible. On the big screens above the stage, the close-up was merciless. You could see the tiny scar above her eyebrow catch the light, the stillness of her pupils, the complete absence of fear. The audience in the room felt it before they understood it. The buzz softened, curiosity cutting through the noise. She didn't speak, not a word, but silence in that moment spoke louder than anything Dana had said. It shifted the atmosphere, bending it away from his grin and toward the question hanging in the air. What was she going to do with that insult? Reporters sensed it too. One leaned forward, lowering his voice as though the whole room hadn't gone quiet. "Rhonda, do you have a response?" She didn't. Not yet. The silence stretched. Dana smirked, drumming his fingers lightly against the table, feeding on the pause. The crowd was split, half laughing with him, half watching her with a strange, held breath. For a second, the room wasn't about questions or headlines anymore. It was about the invisible tension between a man who thought he owned the story and a woman who refused to let him write it. And in her eyes, the challenge burned, cold and unblinking, promising that the real answer would not come in words at all. "Just wondering, where are you watching from? Write it down, Bello." Dana leaned closer to the mic, eyes glinting. "You want the truth?" Her window closed. She was a beast once. No one denies that. But tonight she faces someone younger, hungrier, someone who hasn't forgotten what it means to bleed in the gym every day. He let his smile sharpen. Rhonda forgot how to be a beast in the cage. The words detonated. Laughter scattered through the room, half in shock, half in agreement. Then came the whistles. The first shouted, "New champ!" followed by others, until it grew into a chant swelling from the back rows. Reporters shot up straighter in their seats, waving recorders higher. A boom mic dipped too far, brushing the sponsor banner. Every lens swung toward Dana as if he'd just given them a headline carved in stone. He spread his arms, pacing behind the table. "This isn't personal. It's reality. Focus won't save you from physics. You can stare down a train all you want. It still runs you over." His voice carried easily over the noise, a performer enjoying his stage. "Tonight, the belt moves." The chant thickened. "New champ! New champ!" until it rattled the walls. The smell of sweat and coffee gone stale, mixed with the sharp scent of hot cables. Some journalists laughed like they'd been waiting for permission. A pair of podcasters high-fived on the risers. The atmosphere tilted toward a pile-on, cruelty made public. And still, Rhonda sat perfectly still. Her hands folded on her knees, thumbs pressed flat. The only giveaway was the faint tremor of her knuckles whitening under the lights. If you weren't looking closely, you'd think she hadn't heard a word. But the stillness carried its own pressure, an absence that made his words echo louder. "Say something!" someone from the back yelled, and half a dozen phones swung toward her, hoping for a meltdown or a line they could post before the night was over. The director split the big screen above the stage, Dana's mouth moving on one side, her silence on the other. The contrast told its own story. At last she raised her head. The motion was small, but the room froze. Her gaze was flat, cold, as though she were looking not at Dana, not even at the crowd, but straight through the space that separated them. She leaned toward the mic, her voice level and unhurried. "Wait for the first round." 4 words. Nothing else. The silence was immediate and heavy. Then applause cracked through the stillness, first from the front rows, then spreading backward in pockets. A small group stood, clapping hard. The chant of "New champ" stumbled, then died under the sound. A quieter Ronda started. More pulse than cheer, but it was enough to shift the current. Dana laughed, short and sharp. "That's it? That's the plan? Wait." He gestured broadly, turning toward the cameras, forcing a grin back onto his face. "Clip that. Make sure you've got it. First round, right? I've seen killers. Tonight she's not the one." But the laughter he drew this time was thinner. Reporters still scribbled, but fewer chuckled. The cameras had already looped her 4 words on the big screen, playing the close-up of her mouth again and again. It was the clip people would watch tonight in bars and gyms, muting his voice to study the look in her eyes. Rhonda lowered her gaze again, hands steady now, and reached for the water bottle in front of her. She unscrewed the cap slowly, drank once, then set it back down. The sound of plastic against the table was picked up by the mic, clicking in the hush like a pin pulled from metal. A journalist near the stage whispered to himself, "First round, then." Dana heard it. His smile flickered. The PR handler announced the final question, but no one in the room cared. The story had already left, carried in 4 words and a silence that weighed heavier than his speech. And somewhere inside the noise of applause and the brittle echo of Dana's laugh, a clock began ticking toward the cage. The arena was alive before the fighters even stepped inside. Floodlights poured down, bleaching the canvas until it glowed like ice. The hum of thousands of voices wove together into a restless thunder, chants colliding, no side yet in full control. Half the crowd screamed the challenger's name, voices high and wild, fueled by the promise of an upset. The other half roared, "Ronda, Ronda," lower and steadier, like drums rolling under the floor. On the giant screens, the camera panned across the front row. Dana sat forward, elbows on his knees, lips curled in a grin that he hadn't bothered to hide. He mouthed something to the man next to him, both laughing like gamblers convinced the cards were already dealt. His expression radiated certainty. The story was over, and he had written the ending. The cage door clanged shut behind the challenger. She bounced on her toes, shadowboxing in bursts, hair tied tight, eyes locked on Ronda. There was no hesitation in her body. Everything screamed aggression. Her youth showed in the way she moved, impatient, fast, restless. She pressed against the fence, testing the space, her hands twitching as if eager to make contact. Ronda walked in slowly. No wasted steps, no bounce. Her face was stone, her eyes sharp but unreadable. The crowd screamed at her entrance, but she didn't look left or right. She didn't need to. She placed her back against the cage for a moment, closed her eyes, and inhaled once, her chest barely rising. When she opened them again, the noise of the crowd seemed to dim around her. The referee brought them together, his voice nearly lost under the storm of voices. "Protect yourself at all times. Follow my instructions. Touch gloves." The challenger slammed her fists forward aggressively. Ronda extended her hand, barely brushing the touch, then turned back without expression. That tiny indifference drew a ripple from the crowd, half booing, half cheering, all of them louder than before. The bell rang. The challenger exploded forward instantly, fists flying in quick combinations. The first jab smacked against Ronda's guard. The cross whistled past her cheek. A left hook scraped air as Ronda slid back just enough. The crowd roared at every motion, convinced that a storm was already breaking over her. Ronda didn't counter. She circled slowly, eyes locked, shoulders loose, her arms high but not rigid. Every movement looked minimal, conserving energy. The challenger, fueled by the crowd and Dana's grin, threw harder. A body kick slapped against Ronda's side, echoing in the arena. Dana leaned forward, nodding like a man watching a prophecy unfold. "It's over!" someone shouted from the cheap seats, and the chant built again. "New champ! New champ!" But Ronda's face betrayed nothing. She didn't grimace at the kick, didn't flinch at the flurry of punches. Her eyes were calculating, cold, tracking each strike, letting them miss by inches. It wasn't defense born of panic. It was patience. The challenger pressed harder, swinging a wild right hand. This time, Ronda stepped in, closing distance instead of giving ground. She caught the challenger's wrist with a snap grip, redirected her balance, and shoved her away with a controlled push. It wasn't a throw, not even a strike, just a message. The challenger stumbled back 2 steps, surprised. The crowd gasped, a ripple of "Oh!" rising from every corner. On the big screen, the camera zoomed tight on Ronda's face. Her expression hadn't changed. Eyes fixed, jaw still. Dana's smile faltered for the first time. The challenger shook her arms out, sneering, trying to shake off the moment. She lunged again, pressing forward, jabs cutting the air. Ronda shifted just outside range, blocking one, slipping another, her movements clean and minimal. Then, in a flash, she countered. A short jab, sharp and precise, snapping the challenger's head back. The arena erupted. Half the crowd roared in disbelief. The other half surged to their feet in triumph. The chants collided again, the cage vibrating with sound. The challenger snarled, swinging harder, but her rhythm was broken. For the first time it was clear. Ronda wasn't brittle. She wasn't a relic. She was waiting, and the waiting was working. The cameras caught Dana's face again. He was still leaning forward, still smiling, but it looked tighter now, his eyes flicking nervously from the cage to the screens above. The certainty in his posture had cracked. Inside the cage, the challenger reset, fists up, chest heaving. Ronda stood across from her, calm as stone, the faintest hint of sweat beginning to shine on her forehead. She blinked once, slow, as though time itself had stretched. The crowd roared, but under it there was something else, a growing murmur, a recognition. They had expected a woman about to be broken. What they saw was someone who had turned the first storm aside without losing a breath. And as the seconds ticked on, the question that spread across the arena wasn't, "Can she survive?" It was, "What is she waiting for?" The challenger pressed forward with everything she had, her fists slicing the air in relentless bursts. The first minutes belonged entirely to her. Combinations snapped against Ronda's guard, a body kick thudded against her ribs, and the roar of the arena rose in unison. "New champ! New champ!" echoed from the rafters, shaking the steel beams overhead. Every strike made the chant louder, every flurry another nail hammered into the story Dana had promised. The cameras cut to him in the front row. Dana leaned back in his chair, smiling wide, tapping a friend on the shoulder as if they were watching a highlight reel unfold live. He gestured toward the cage, lips moving with a joke that drew laughter from the man beside him. His body language said everything. He was enjoying the confirmation of his prophecy. Inside the cage, Ronda looked human for a moment. A stiff jab knocked her head back. She stepped into the fence, absorbing a knee to the thigh. Her arms stayed high, her guard absorbing more punishment than the crowd was used to seeing from her. Even the commentators' voices rose with a note of surprise. "She's struggling here. She looks tentative." The challenger's confidence swelled. She grinned between combinations, throwing wider, harder shots. She shouted as she struck, screams that the microphones caught and amplified. The arena fed on it, pouring their energy into her assault. Dana's smile grew. His gamble looked safer by the second. But silence has its own timing. Ronda's face, battered under the lights, carried no panic. She let the crowd believe, let Dana grin, let the challenger unload everything. Her chest rose and fell in measured breaths, her feet shifting subtly beneath her. She had given them the illusion of dominance, and then, all at once, the illusion cracked. The challenger lunged with a looping right hand, overcommitted, her chin high. Ronda's left arm snapped up, blocking the strike with a thud that echoed through the cage. Her right hand fired back instantly. 1, 2, 3 sharp punches, each precise, each landing flush on the challenger's jaw and cheekbone. The sudden accuracy froze the attack midstream. The crowd gasped. The chant stuttered. The challenger stumbled a half-step back, eyes wide, blinking. Ronda didn't let her breathe. A hook to the body sank deep, followed by a stiff jab that sent sweat spraying into the lights. The rhythm shifted in an instant. The hunter had become prey. Dana's grin faltered. His head tilted, his jaw tightening as he leaned forward, elbows on his knees. The man beside him stopped laughing. The cameras caught it all, broadcasting his change of expression to the giant screens above the cage. The challenger tried to reset, hands up, but Ronda walked her down. Her movements were sharp now, no hesitation, no wasted motion. Every strike she threw landed. A straight right snapped the challenger's head back. A knee to the body folded her slightly. Another jab kept her off balance. The arena's sound transformed. Where moments ago chants had mocked Ronda, now the noise fractured into gasps, shouts, and an eerie hush between impacts. People leaned forward in their seats, hands clasped to their mouths. The story was no longer one-sided. Ronda stalked her opponent, cutting off the cage. The challenger swung wild, desperate to re-establish control. Ronda slipped effortlessly, countering with a left hook that drew another roar from the crowd. For the first time, fear flickered across the challenger's face. And then came the moment that froze everything. The challenger charged again, throwing a reckless combination. Ronda parried the first punch, stepped inside the second, and clamped onto her opponent's arm. The grip was instant, vice-like, halting the motion mid-swing. The challenger jerked, twisted, tried to rip free. Nothing. Her arm was caught. The crowd rose as one, their voices crashing into silence as they realized what it meant. Ronda had control. For 3 heartbeats, the arena was silent except for the sound of the challenger's labored breathing and the squeak of shoes on canvas. Cameras zoomed close, catching Ronda's eyes. Cold, merciless, unshaken. The crowd knew. Dana knew. This wasn't going to be a fight in one direction. And for the first time all night, the outcome felt uncertain. The grip didn't loosen. The challenger felt the vice on her forearm and tried to bull forward to break it, throwing her shoulder like a battering ram. Ronda didn't give ground. She pivoted, head tight to the bicep, wrist pinned, and walked her into the fence as if towing a stubborn door across a floor. The chain link rasped against the challenger's back. Up close, the mics caught the short, ugly breaths of effort, one from each of them, hers calm, the other chopped. Desperation flared. The challenger threw knees, hard and hurried, aiming blind for the body. One thudded off hip, another grazed thigh. Ronda adjusted a half-inch and smothered the line with a shin block, never releasing the arm. Her forehead pressed to the challenger's cheek, turning the face away, stealing vision. The crowd felt the change. Aggression had become escape. "Work, work!" a coach yelled from somewhere. The voice sounded far away, swallowed by the air. The challenger tried a hip switch, slipped her arm down to repummel for inside control. Ronda let her think she had it, then cinched the elbow tight again and threaded her free hand deep for a 2-on-1. The movement was simple, old as the sport, and definitive. Dana was on the big screen now. No grin, leaning forward too far, as if proximity could alter physics. Ronda shifted her feet, and the world dropped. A compact outside trip, no flourish, just angle, took the challenger's base, and gravity did the rest. They hit with a flat slap and a ripple through the canvas. Ronda landed perpendicular, knee heavy on belly, arm still captured, head tucked. The cage was suddenly a room with a locked door. The noise changed shape. Gasps, then a roar that rolled like weather. People stood out of reflex, half to see better, half to be part of the moment if it broke. The challenger bridged hard, hips popping, trying to create space. Ronda rode the wave, posting with one hand, torso low, cheek pressed to triceps. The camera caught the detail. Her eyes open, calm, reading each attempt like subtitles. The challenger turned to her knees. Ronda denied it with a drag back to the mat, knees sliding higher across ribs, weight settling like a verdict. From the floor, the challenger tried to yank the trapped arm free with both hands. Bad trade. Ronda let the pull extend and stepped her leg across the head, shoe squeaking, thigh sealing the neck. The crowd inhaled sharply. A woman in the second row grabbed her friend's wrist so hard the skin blanched. On screen, Dana's mouth opened and didn't find words. "Hold on!" someone screamed. The challenger did. Fingers knotted, wrists white. Ronda didn't pry. She repositioned, millimeters at a time, heel walking to the far hip, hips climbing, her own hands close to her chest, patient as a carpenter lining up a cut. The challenger thrashed again, boots digging, trying to stack Ronda and crush the angle. Ronda posted, let the stack come, then slid her hips a palm's width toward the wrist and flattened the stack with a twist that looked like nothing and felt like everything. The pressure spread across tendons. The challenger's face changed. Anger first, then calculation, then something she didn't want the camera to catch. Around the cage, the sound built, a kind of electrical hum under the chants. People who had cheered for a new champion now watched with hands over their mouths. The ones who had whispered first round earlier were saying nothing at all. Ronda fished her near hand under the forearm and grabbed her own wrist. Figure 4, tight. The challenger clamped both hands together, elbows glued, Ronda's chin tucked, eyes on the thumb line. She breathed once. The clock ticked. Dana checked it, pretended he hadn't. The challenger tried one more stack, this one frantic, driving her weight forward, forehead into Ronda's ribs. Ronda rotated, heel biting the mat, knee pinching the shoulder, hips high and cruel. The grip broke a finger at a time. The building heard it without sound. The moment resistance isn't strategy anymore, but denial. The camera cut back to Dana. The smile was gone. His jaw worked. The friend next to him wasn't laughing. Ronda extended in increments, never hurried, the way a safecracker turns a dial. The challenger's free hand pawed at Ronda's knee, then at the wrist, then at the air. Her feet bicycled uselessly. The ref crouched, close enough to touch, eyes level with the joint. His hand hovered, not intruding, ready. The challenger rolled, trying to spin out. Ronda followed, glued, hips floating with the turn, toes pointed, heels heavy. The chain link hissed as a boot scraped it. The canvas smelled like bleach and old sweat, and the lights made everything look too clean for pain. Breathe, a corner voice pleaded. The challenger did. One ragged inhale, one ragged exhale, and gave the arm away a fraction to survive the breath. Ronda took the fraction, locked the elbow against her pelvis, and leaned back 1 inch. The joint straightened. The crowd reacted like the ring had dropped 5 feet. Dana's face, 10 feet tall on the screen, lost color. The challenger arched, teeth bared, eyes squeezed shut. She shook her head hard enough to sling sweat into the lights. Ronda adjusted again, micro-precise. Thumb turned up, knees pinched, shoulder isolated. The hold was no longer a threat, it was a fact. People were on their feet now, hands in hair, shirts twisted in fists. The sound surged from roar to scream, not joy, tension, the kind of sound that rattles glass. The ref asked something the cameras didn't catch. The challenger didn't answer with words. She grimaced, dug nails into her own glove, tried to bend an arm that had no bend left. Ronda felt the tremor run through tendon into bone. The camera cut to Dana one more time. The whiteness in his face wasn't fear for a fighter. It was the realization of a debt coming due in public. His bet wasn't money anymore. It was narrative. And he just watched it slip from his hands to hers. Ronda tightened. Not a yank, not a jerk. A steady pull into the end of the joint's story. The challenger's hand floated, inches above the mat, fingers twitching between pride and relief. The crowd saw it lift and screamed louder, trying to drown the decision or celebrate it, no one sure which. The ref leaned in, mouth near the canvas, ready to slap the stoppage if it came slow. A second stretched long enough to hold a lifetime. The challenger's palm hovered, shaking. The camera stayed on Dana's face, and the sound of the arena collapsed into a single intake of breath, held hard as her hand began to fall. It landed with a flat, helpless smack on the canvas. Once, twice, 3 times. The referee was already there, waving his arms, pulling Ronda's grip loose. The bell followed a beat late, like even the timekeeper had been holding his breath. Ronda let go instantly. No cruelty, no show. She stood in one clean motion, hair damp against her cheek, chest rising slow and even. On the mat, the challenger curled around her arm, face tight with pain, the doctor rushing in through the cage door. For a second, the noise didn't come. The silence itself was loud, thousands processing that it was already over. Then the sound tore loose all at once, an eruption that rattled the rafters. People leapt to their feet, stomping, clapping, shouting her name until the concrete shook. She didn't climb the fence, didn't throw her hands high. She simply turned once in the cage, her expression unreadable. The referee lifted her wrist. She didn't resist, didn't add to it. The gesture was punctuation, not celebration. The camera found Dana. 10 feet high on the big screen, his smile was gone. His face was blank, the color drained, lips pressed into a line. The man who had promised her fall sat still, unable to laugh, unable to talk. The shot lingered a second too long before cutting away. Around him, the crowd that had screamed "New champ" minutes earlier was now clapping for her. Some looked sheepish, others exhilarated, but the energy had shifted completely. A woman in the lower bowl pressed her hands together in thanks. A man ripped the new queen poster he'd brought. Strangers hugged in the aisles. The announcer's voice tried to cut through. 4 minutes, 49 seconds of round 1, by armbar. The rest was drowned by the chant, "Ronda! R-O-N-D-A!" The sound rolled like thunder, shaking loose dust from the catwalks. The interviewer approached. Mic raised. Ronda accepted it without looking at him. She turned her eyes instead to the front row, locking on Dana. The screens caught both faces side by side, hers steady, his pale. "Don't bet against me," she said. "Ever." She handed the mic back. The arena detonated again, the chant hotter now, carried by people who only minutes ago had booed her. The challenger sat on a stool with ice wrapped around her elbow, eyes wet, jaw tight. She nodded once in Ronda's direction. Not respect, not surrender, just acknowledgement. Ronda gave a short nod in return and walked on. Handlers tried to circle her for the official photo. She let them buckle the belt across her waist, but didn't grip it, didn't lift it. The gold rested there like another fact. When asked for a smile, she gave the camera half a second, then dropped back into calm. The ovation shifted into rhythm. Whole sections clapped in unison, sending the chant rolling clockwise around the arena. It wasn't just victory anymore. It was recognition. Dana finally stood, smoothing his jacket, jaw tight. He didn't clap. He didn't leave. He simply stood there, facing the cage as if trying to rewrite what had just happened with his stare. Ronda stepped through the cage door and onto the black mats. Fans reached out, some hesitant, some desperate. A boy with a foam finger froze, unsure. She tapped her glove gently against his hand, and he looked at his father as if something permanent had just been passed down. At the tunnel entrance, she stopped, backlit by the lights. The camera framed her there, belt across her waist, crowd behind her. She didn't pose, didn't wave. She lifted her head once, as though speaking to herself and the building at the same time. "See you in the next first round." Most didn't hear it. Enough did. By the time she reached the locker room, the words were already moving through the concourse, whispered, repeated, recorded, becoming part of the legend. Back in the cage, staff rolled the canvas, medics checked the challenger, and fans shuffled toward the exits, still buzzing. On the floor, strangers debated whether it had been inevitable or impossible. In the rafters, someone started the chant again, softer this time, almost like a hymn. But the night had already burned its image into memory. A hand falling on canvas, a prophecy broken, a woman walking away without a smile because she didn't need one. Power had spoken, quiet and absolute. And for once, the loudest man in the building had nothing left to say.